Have you ever wondered why humans sweat in the first place? And why this simple liquid has such a bad reputation? On a hot day, during exercise, or even before an important exam, your body starts producing sweat as if it is responding to something urgent. Yet most of us see sweat as an annoying thing that should be eliminated, while the truth is completely different. If sweat suddenly disappeared from humanity, life would not become more comfortable. Instead, we would face a serious problem that could threaten our body's ability to function normally. So the real question is not only why we sweat, but why the body needs this process at all. Sweat is a fluid produced by tiny glands spread throughout many parts of the body. It is made mostly of water, along with small amounts of salts and other compounds. When your body temperature rises because of hot weather, physical activity, or any energy-consuming task, these glands begin producing sweat, which reaches the surface of the skin. As this liquid evaporates into the air, it carries away some of the body's heat, gradually lowering your temperature. It may sound simple, but it is actually one of nature's most efficient cooling systems. The human body is like a complex machine that constantly generates heat, and sweat is one of the key mechanisms that prevents this machine from overheating. But here comes a puzzling question. If sweat is so beneficial, why do people dislike it? Why is it associated with that unpleasant smell we try to hide using deodorants and perfumes? The surprising fact is that sweat itself has almost no odor. Yes, the liquid coming out of your body is not the real culprit. The problem begins after it reaches the skin. Millions of bacteria naturally live on our bodies. They are not always harmful. In fact, many of them are a normal part of the human biological system. When these bacteria feed on certain substances found in sweat, they produce volatile chemical compounds with strong odors. Those compounds are what we actually smell. In other words, what we call body odor is not really the smell of sweat itself, but the result of the activity of microscopic organisms that we cannot even see. This leads to another fascinating question. Why does sweat smell different from one person to another? And why do some people seem to have a stronger odor than others? Research suggests that several factors are involved, including genetics, diet, physical activity, and even the specific types of bacteria living on the skin. Every person has a slightly different biological environment, which means the resulting odors can vary significantly. Certain foods, especially heavily spiced meals, as well as daily habits, can influence the compounds released by the body and ultimately affect the final smell. Even more surprisingly, the body does not produce sweat only when it feels hot. Have you ever noticed your palms becoming sweaty before an important meeting or during a stressful moment? This is where the brain enters the story. When a person experiences fear, anxiety, or psychological pressure, the nervous system sends signals that activate the sweat glands. It is as if the body is preparing itself to face a challenge, even when no physical danger is present. That is why you can start sweating while sitting in a cool room simply because your mind is experiencing stress or anticipation. But why do we feel disgusted by the smell of sweat in the first place? One scientific theory suggests that the human brain evolved to be sensitive to certain odors that may indicate the presence of bacteria or unhealthy conditions. As a result, feeling repulsed by some smells may be an ancient survival mechanism that helped humans avoid potential sources of disease. However, the perception of odors varies from person to person. A smell that one individual finds unpleasant may not bother someone else to the same degree. This shows that odor is not merely an objective reality, but also an experience interpreted by the brain in different ways. In the end, when you think of sweat as nothing more than an annoying inconvenience, remember that it is actually working for you, not against you. It is a highly sophisticated cooling system that keeps your body temperature within safe limits and allows you to run, work, think, and adapt to the challenges of daily life. The smell we dislike so much is simply a side effect of a complex interaction taking place on the surface of the skin. Perhaps sweat is one of the best examples of how something that seems unpleasant at first glance can actually be essential for survival. So the next time you see drops of sweat on your forehead, ask yourself, is this just water? Or is it evidence that your body is carrying out one of the smartest processes designed to keep you alive? Have you ever stepped outside right after it started raining and suddenly noticed a unique scent filling the air? A smell unlike perfume, flowers, or almost anything else. A scent that makes many people stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and think, that smells amazing. But here's a strange question. Are we actually smelling the rain itself? Or is what we smell not the rain at all? And how can drops of water, which are nearly odorless, create a sensation recognized by people all over the world? Why does this smell seem capable of awakening old memories and emotions that are difficult to describe? At first, it may seem like a simple phenomenon, but behind it lies a fascinating scientific story involving chemistry, biology, geology, and even psychology. For many years, people believed that the scent appearing after rainfall came directly from the rainwater itself. However, scientists discovered something completely different. Rain is not the true source of the smell. It is merely the messenger that reveals something already present on the ground. During dry days or weeks, soil, rocks, and plants accumulate and release various compounds onto their surfaces. Some of these compounds are produced by plants, while others come from microscopic organisms living in the soil. When the first raindrops finally hit the ground, something remarkable happens. The droplets collide with the soil and release thousands of tiny air bubbles. These bubbles carry microscopic chemical particles into the atmosphere, and once they reach our noses, the journey of that familiar scent begins. But what exactly is responsible for this smell? During the 1960s, scientists investigated this question and discovered that one of the key contributors is a compound called geosmin. The name may sound unusual, but it roughly means earth smell. Geosmin is produced by certain types of bacteria that live in the soil. When conditions become favorable, especially after rainfall, this compound is released into the air. What makes this even more fascinating is that humans are extraordinarily sensitive to it. In fact, our noses can detect geosmin in incredibly tiny concentrations. This means your brain can recognize its presence even when the amount is almost unimaginably small. This leads to another intriguing question. Why do we enjoy this smell so much? Why do we react to it differently than we do to thousands of other scents we encounter every day? There is no final answer yet, but several interesting theories exist. Some researchers suggest that throughout human history, rainfall was closely linked to survival. Rain meant fresh water, growing vegetation, and improved living conditions. Over countless generations, the human brain may have developed a positive response to signs that indicated the arrival of rain. In other words, perhaps our appreciation of this scent is not a coincidence at all. It may be rooted in our evolutionary past. The story becomes even more interesting when psychology enters the picture. Smells have a unique relationship with memory. A single scent can suddenly bring back moments you have not thought about for years. It may remind you of a childhood afternoon, a familiar place, or an emotion you thought had been forgotten. This happens because the regions of the brain that process smells are closely connected to those responsible for memory and emotion. That is why the smell of rain often feels nostalgic, even when people cannot explain exactly what it reminds them of. It is not merely a collection of chemical particles entering the nose. It can become a key that unlocks hidden memories deep within the mind. Another mystery emerges here. Why is the smell sometimes stronger than at other times? Why does the first rain after a long dry period often seem more powerful and memorable? The answer lies in accumulation. During dry weather, various compounds gradually build up on soil, rocks, and vegetation. When rain finally arrives, many of these substances are released into the air all at once. If rain continues for a long period, however, much of this material is washed away or dispersed, causing the scent to weaken. This is why the first rainfall after a drought often feels especially magical. Scientists have also discovered that the speed and intensity of raindrops play an important role. Research suggests that light to moderate rainfall can sometimes be more effective at releasing aromatic particles than extremely heavy rain. The reason is that the impact between raindrops and the ground creates microscopic air bubbles that burst almost instantly, launching tiny particles into the atmosphere. It is a process that occurs so quickly that we never see it, yet its effects reach our sense of smell almost immediately. When you think about it, the entire phenomenon is surprisingly strange. We walk outside and assume we are smelling rainwater, when in reality, we are often experiencing a complex mixture of soil, bacteria, plants, air, and countless chemical interactions occurring around us. What appears to be a simple scent is actually a message from the earth itself, a message carrying traces of microscopic life, invisible chemical reactions, and memories hidden within our own minds. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this phenomenon is how it reminds us of the complexity of the world around us. Even a scent that lasts only a few moments contains an entire network of scientific events. Raindrops fall from the sky, strike the ground, release microscopic compounds, travel through the air, enter the human nose, and are transformed by the brain into feelings of comfort, nostalgia, or happiness. All of this happens within seconds, so the next time rain begins to fall, pause for a moment and take a deep breath. The smell you notice is not simply the smell of rain, it is an extraordinary story being told by the earth itself. What if the oxygen we breathe is actually a slow poison? Imagine if the very thing keeping us alive was also the thing killing us, not in minutes, not in days, but incredibly slowly, over the course of 70 to 100 years. What if every breath you take right now brings you one step closer to the end? It may sound like something out of a science fiction movie, but it's not entirely far from reality. Oxygen is essential for life. Without it, our cells would die within minutes. But at the same time, every time your cells use oxygen to produce energy, they generate tiny amounts of highly reactive molecules known as free radicals. These molecules can attack DNA, proteins, and even cell membranes. Over the years, this damage gradually accumulates, which many scientists believe is one of the factors that contributes to aging and the development of certain age-related diseases. But don't misunderstand, oxygen is not a poison in the literal sense. If it disappeared, we wouldn't survive in the first place. It's more like the price life pays in exchange for energy. And the best part is that our bodies are not defenseless. They have powerful defense systems and antioxidants that constantly repair damage and reduce the effects of these free radicals, which is why we are able to live for many decades. So, when you hear someone say that oxygen slowly kills us, it's an intriguing statement, but it's not entirely accurate. The truth is that oxygen gives us life, while at the same time, over the years, it leaves behind side effects that cannot be completely avoided. Now tell me, if you had never known this fact, would you have believed that the very thing keeping you alive could also be one of the reasons you grow old? What if I told you that what you're hearing right now doesn't enter your ear the way you think it does? At this very moment, thousands of sounds surround you. The sound of your breathing, the noise of the street, and perhaps even the sound of your clothes moving. But how do all these invisible vibrations turn into words, music, and sounds that you understand? The answer is more astonishing than you might imagine. Everything begins when an object vibrates. These vibrations push air molecules, creating sound waves that travel at a speed of about 343 meters per second until they reach your ear. And this is where the first stage of the journey begins. The outer ear collects these waves and directs them through a narrow ear canal until they strike the eardrum, a thin membrane that vibrates in exactly the same pattern as the sound that reached it. But the eardrum alone is not enough. Right behind it are the three smallest bones in the human body, the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. Despite their incredibly tiny size, they work as an amazing mechanical system, transmitting and amplifying the vibrations before sending them to the inner ear. And there, the real magic happens. Inside the inner ear is the cochlea, a small spiral-shaped organ that resembles a snail shell and is filled with fluid. When the vibrations reach it, this fluid begins to move, causing thousands of tiny hair cells inside it to move as well. Despite their name, these are not ordinary hairs. They are extremely sensitive sensory receptors. Each one responds to a specific tone or frequency. Some detect high-pitched sounds, while others detect low-pitched sounds. And when these cells bend, they do something incredible. They convert mechanical movement into electrical signals. Immediately afterward, these signals travel through the auditory nerve at incredible speed to the brain. What is even more astonishing is that the brain does not hear the sound exactly as it is. Instead, it completely reconstructs it. It determines where the sound came from, distinguishes between different sounds, recognizes words, and can even focus on one person's voice among dozens of other voices at the same time. This entire process, from the moment the sound enters your ear until you become aware of it, takes only a tiny fraction of a second. In the end, you don't hear with your ears alone. You hear with your brain. Have you ever thought that the world you see in front of you isn't actually what your eyes see? It's a version that your brain creates in real time. The moment you look at anything, light reflects off it and travels at an incredible speed toward your eyes. It first enters through the cornea, which begins bending the light, then passes through the pupil, which constantly changes its size to control the amount of light entering, just like a camera aperture. After that, the lens changes its shape in fractions of a second, allowing nearby and distant objects to appear clear regardless of the distance. The light then reaches the retina, a thin layer lining the back of the eye, but in reality, it is more like an ultra-precise sensor. It contains millions of light-sensitive cells that do more than simply capture the image. They instantly convert it into electrical signals. Surprisingly, the image formed on the retina is completely upside down, yet you never notice it. This is where the real hero of the story steps in, the brain. The signals travel through the optic nerve at incredible speed, and the brain begins analyzing them in fractions of a second. It doesn't just turn the image right side up, it also adds color, determines depth, calculates distances, recognizes faces, detects movement, and sometimes even fills in missing information without you realizing it. Even more fascinating is that what you see is not a direct recording of reality, but an interpretation created by your brain based on the light and information it receives. That's why optical illusions can fool you, because the brain sometimes interprets a scene differently from reality. So, every time you open your eyes, you are not seeing the world exactly as it is. You are seeing the incredible version your brain builds in less than a fraction of a second, thousands of times every single day, without you even realizing it. What if I told you that the smell you're sensing right now never actually entered your brain? Instead, only tiny particles entered, and your brain is the one that created the sensation of smell. With every breath you take, thousands of airborne molecules from food, flowers, rain, or anything around you enter your nose. These molecules have no recognizable form to you, but they carry a unique chemical code. When they reach the upper part of your nose, they bind to tiny receptors located on specialized olfactory cells. Amazingly, each type of receptor responds only to specific molecules, as if every smell has its own unique key. The moment the right key fits the right lock, this chemical interaction is converted into electrical impulses that travel rapidly to the brain through the olfactory nerve. But this is where the real miracle begins. The brain doesn't receive a message saying, "This is the smell of coffee," or "This is the smell of a flower." Instead, it receives millions of electrical signals, analyzes their pattern, and compares it with your previous memories to identify what you're smelling, all within fractions of a second. That's why a single smell can instantly take you back to a day from your childhood, an old home, or someone you haven't seen in years, because the sense of smell is directly connected to the brain's centers for memory and emotion. Even more surprising, after spending a few minutes in the same place, you may completely stop noticing the smell, even though it's still there. Not because your nose has stopped working, but because your brain has decided it's no longer important and has started searching for any new smell that could signal food or danger. That's why smelling isn't simply about breathing in air. It's an extraordinary process in which your brain transforms invisible molecules into smells, memories, and emotions in less than a second. You're standing in front of a mirror, then suddenly you start changing your facial expressions, trying out different smiles, repeating the same sentence over and over, and sometimes even imagining an entire conversation with someone who isn't there. If you do this, you might be thinking, that's it, I'm mentally ill. But wait, in reality, what you're doing is something millions of people do. Your brain uses the mirror as a tool to simulate reality. You're not just practicing how you look, you're practicing how other people see you. That's why you might rehearse the way you speak before an important meeting. Imagine how you would react in an argument or repeat a certain gesture until it feels natural. It's your brain's way of improving your social image and reducing mistakes before they happen in real life. What's even more interesting is that some studies suggest this kind of mental simulation can boost your confidence when done in moderation because it makes real-life situations feel less stressful. However, if you find yourself spending hours in front of the mirror or becoming obsessed with every tiny detail of your appearance to the point that it affects your daily life, then it could be related to a problem that deserves professional attention. So the next time you catch yourself standing in front of the mirror rehearsing what you're going to say, don't worry. You're probably not mentally ill. Your brain is simply doing what it was designed to do thousands of years ago. Just don't let it overdo it. Did you know that simply having someone sit on your chest can become a real danger if it continues for too long? Even more surprisingly, the first thing that could kill you isn't the pain. It's the air you can no longer get into your lungs. The moment a heavy weight is placed on your chest, you feel intense tightness and a terrifying urge to breathe. The reason isn't that your lungs have stopped working, but that they can no longer expand normally. Every breath you take, your lungs depend on the expansion of your ribcage and diaphragm. But when a heavy weight presses on your chest, that movement becomes restricted, causing each breath to become smaller than the one before. At first, your body tries to compensate by breathing faster. But as the pressure continues, oxygen levels gradually drop while carbon dioxide builds up in your blood. That's when your brain triggers an overwhelming feeling of suffocation, driving you to fight with all your strength just to take one more breath. That's why a person feels indescribable panic in those moments, because the brain is programmed to treat a lack of air as one of the greatest threats to survival. If the pressure is severe or lasts for a long time, the body may no longer be able to take in enough air, which can lead to dangerously low oxygen levels and become life-threatening if the pressure is not removed quickly and medical help is not provided. That's why that terrifying feeling when something presses on your chest isn't just an ordinary sensation. It's an urgent alarm from your body telling you that every breath has become a fight for survival.